and welcome back to the MMA India Show with your host Parvin Dabas and MMA guru Akhilesh Gannavarapu. That actually rhymes. I never realized that up till now, but it rhymes. Guru Gannavarapu. You know, I can do the Muhammad Ali thing also now and then. So, Akhilesh is in Delhi, let's say, covering the SFL. He's our man at the SFL right now, but we're going to get to that later. First, we are going to do the post-fight analysis of UFC Houston. And there were quite a few good cards on the prelims as well, but we're going to talk about the main card. I thought all the fights on the main card were pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Apart from the Ozedemir St. Preux fight, which got a little, both were tired in the end. But let's start from the very beginning. The fight of the night, Jessica Andrade versus Angela Hill. Of course, Angela Hill being, she's the strawweight champ, right? From Invicta. And making her, coming back to the UFC to face upcoming Jessica, who just beat, who did Jessica just beat? Was it Rose?
No.
Namajunas?
No, the last person to beat Rose Namajunas was Carolina.
Carolina, yeah. Who did Jessica beat before this fight?
I need to check that up.
Do we have to Google it on air?
Yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly, though, it has to be Johan. Calderwood. Calderwood.
Sorry?
Johan Calderwood. Yeah.
Calderwood, yeah. I think it was Calderwood, but let's just check. Yeah, it was Joanne Calderwood. Before that, Jessica Penne. And she lost to Raquel Pennington before that. So, coming off 2 wins, 1 loss, which is not that great, not that bad either, but great boxing skills. And this was a real battle because Angela Hill from the very beginning was establishing distance, coming in, coming out, keeping her, because she knew she didn't want to get into the pockets and face Jessica. She didn't want Jessica to let loose inside the pocket. So she was always fighting from the outside or attempting to. Of course, she was put against the cage quite a few times, tried getting away. A real brave performance, I would say, by Angela Hill, because she got knocked around quite a few times, but never really went down. Though a lot of times I felt a couple of those hits were going to put her out. But I thought a really great performance in the end from Angela, and she kept getting it back. So you never knew by the end who really had it.
Right.
And it was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was a split decision, right? Or was
unanimous.
It unanimous?
It was a unanimous decision. Yeah.
It was unanimous. Okay. Okay. But a great fight, and deservedly fight of the night.
Yeah. So, I thought this card would be the card of resurgence of many fighters, including Angela Hill, including Felice Herrig, including, the Korean Zombie. I was looking forward to this fight because, Angela did not have the best of records previously in the UFC. She went to Invicta, won 4 fights, won the Invicta FC strawweight belt, and now she was coming back. So it was a big moment for her, and it was a big moment for Andrade as well, because she was ranked at number 5 before the fight, and apparently UFC offered her the title fight with Joanna next. Andrade said, "You know what? Give me 1 more fight, and after that, I'll fight Joanna." So, we recently asked Joanna who she would want to face. We probably might have our answer there. The other thing with Andrade is she's scary strong, especially for the 115-pound division. So, Angela had the proper game plan where she just wanted to keep her distance, try to work from the outside. She had, a lot of striking pedigree in her arsenal. She had a good Muay Thai kickboxing background. She comes from a very good kickboxing background, and she's known for her striking. So she had the necessary skills to keep Andrade boxing range with Andrade, but doing that with someone like Jessica is very, very tough. We've seen during the 2nd and 3rd round that Andrade just was trying to close the distance, was trying to get inside the clinch, which also worked for Angela because she did not, once you're inside the clinch, you do not have the space required that Andrade needs to get in a power punches. And the other thing that was very calculated and methodical, I thought, on Angela's part was her circling. She always was cautious that she did not circle towards the power right of Andrade. So it was a very scientific fight, and a very scientific approach by Angela. But the other thing is, Andrade, you look at the muscle on her for 115, and she just doesn't get tired. She, even when
Yeah.
the fight went to the ground, it was Andrade that was getting the upper hand. And although she was, trying to tag with those power punches, she was not gassing out for the entire 3 rounds. So it was, and I thought Angela was thrown right into the Shark Tank, right into the deep waters during a return. She fought a top five fighter in the UFC, in the division, and a very well deserved win for Andrade. She's gonna face Joanna next. That is for sure.
Yeah. But I think Angela Hill still has a place in the
Yeah, I'm not.
UFC. I think she's going to get more fights because she really, yeah. But she did show that in a way the UFC is a much, much tougher place than
Yeah, and
Invicta.
you can also know that just from the fact that UFC kind of takes whatever top talent Invicta has. You have the likes of Alexa Grasso, who was supposed to fight for the title next, but
Yeah.
UFC kind of took her from Invicta. So yeah, I mean, UFC is very deep. All the divisions are very deep in the company. Angela might or should have gotten a comparatively easier fight. She was fighting someone that is touted as the next number one contender for the title. So
Yeah, this was a really
yeah,
tough
it was,
fight to
it
start
was.
with.
So, but still, Angela did well. She did not crumble, because once you get tagged by those power punches from someone like Andrade, it's lights out. But still, Angela was successful in kind of executing a game plan, although she did not get the W. It was a good fight. It was a good attempt on Angela's part, but I think she should have gotten a much easier fight than someone like Andrade.
Okay. Now coming to Marcel Fortuna versus Anthony Hamilton, I think this whole fight was about that one, was just about the knockout.
Right.
Because of course in the heavyweight, no matter who's on the back foot, but just that one hit makes all the difference. And this fight is a classic example of that.
Right. And the other thing is, uh, I don't know if you have read about it or not, but Fortuna, he kind of lied to the UFC when they offered him the fight. They asked him if he would be willing to fight in the heavyweight division. He said, "Yeah, I'm 230," when in reality he was about 210 coming into the fight. So that was
Uh-huh.
something that he just wanted to fight, and UFC offered him one. So, but yeah, I mean, and we talked previously, and you were excited about Anthony Hamilton fighting on the card. So this was unexpected. A lot of people actually thought Hamilton would be the one that would get his hand raised. Uh, yeah, and
Yeah.
it was, it ended quickly. Yeah, you kind of.
What I mean is it could go either way sometimes in these fights. It's just the one with the sharper, at that precise moment, the sharper reflexes. And the guy who pulls the trigger at the right time.
Yeah, but I thought going into this fight, it was an easy fight for someone like Hamilton. But it's difficult to analyze what happened, because it wasn't something that just kept going. It was both traded, but it was just that, as you said, that one big shot that kind of got Fortuna the victory.
Yeah. Now coming to Volkan Ozdemir versus Owen St. Preux. Uh, Ozdemir, of course, was a
Right.
replacement for the Polish guy. What was his name?
Um, Jan Blachowicz.
Yeah, Jan Blachowicz. So he was a replacement for him, and he was doing pretty well in the beginning. Ozdemir was doing pretty well. I think Owens saw a comeback. Of course, in the end, if he had a couple of more seconds, he could have possibly finished it out also. But I think both of them, especially Osdemar, really lost the gas tank in the end. The last round,
Yeah, and
was kind of sluggish, except for Owens, like I said, making a comeback in that last, couple of minutes.
right. Yeah, Owens and Prue is one of those fighters. I when I look at certain divisions and I look at certain fighters, they show so much promise. One example, classic example of that is Uriah Hall, and one other classic example is Owen St. Preux. So a couple of years ago, when I looked at
Yeah.
Uriah Hall, I thought, what, this guy is gonna challenge for the title in the future, and I thought the exact same thing with Owen St. Preux because they showed so much promise early on in their careers. Uh, um, but this fight it just doesn't bode well for Owen St. Preux because not too long ago he fought John Jones, and before that he picked up some good victories.
Yeah.
He fought John Jones, he fought Maneuver last, I think, and that was a terrible knockout. And
So this is Owens' third loss in a row now.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's difficult when fighters with so much promise.
And even though it was a disputed split decision, some people disagreed with the way it went, but he didn't really do enough to win clearly outright.
Right, so he didn't. So he was counting on his grappling more than anything else. He was trying to, the main thing that kind of struck me is some of these guys who are kind of, who do not have the confidence that they possessed some time ago. What they do is they try to get ahead on the. They kind of rely more on getting the nod from the judges. So Owens, I thought, kind of the same. He was trying to get ahead on the scorecards. The second and the third rounds, you could see he was just going for takedowns. He was trying to grapple because he knew that in the striking department he might not have the edge. But yeah, in the end, even I thought it was Owens' fight. Even by split decision, I thought Owens had won the fight. But for some reason, the other thing is it was in Texas. So a lot of these things happen in Texas. A lot of wrong decisions from the judges happen in Texas. So did not bode well for.
Why do you think that is?
Texas Commission, the Athletic Commission. It's a very long story again. It just is how it is in Texas. I remember when the fight between Dara 5000 and Kimbo was in Texas. So just the Athletic Commission does just the way that they perform is questionable. Let me just end things there. So whenever you're fighting in Texas, just never leave it to the judges. And Owens made the mistake of leaving it to the judges.
To the judges, yeah. But he tried to close it out, but wasn't.
Yeah, as I said,
so bad luck.
Yeah, he was low on confidence. That is the problem with these guys. When you're low on confidence and you're coming off 2 losses, you'd rather not get inside the pockets, inside the range, and get something that happened the last fight with Jimmy Manuwa. He was. I think that was in the corner of his mind. So it's difficult for someone like OSP. But where does he go from here? I don't know. I mean, at least after the loss with Manuwa, you thought, okay, maybe one more or 2 more victories and he'd be back again fighting top 10 contenders in the division. But where does he go from here? No idea.
Yeah. Well, coming to the next fight, James Vick versus Abel Trujillo. I was really impressed with James Vick. I thought, he did really well to put himself on the map. He fought amazingly well, had really great skills. And, like I said, he's made himself a name. He's put the James Vick name out there.
Right, and the thing with Trujillo, he possesses scary knockout power. and he's no muck when it comes to grappling as well. So it was a very tough fight for Vic, but just the manner in which so
That's exactly what I mean. I mean, Trujillo is a veteran. He's got a name already, and James Vick made a name off of him.
right, and I think so. Some when these fights happen and when the end happened, as a fighter. So whenever I talk to a lot of fighters, and even when we talk to Angela Hill during a twister submission, the thing that she said was, before I even went out to fight, this was a submission that I was working on. So even in the second round, you could see Vic trying to go for the dash choke. Yeah, I think he kind of tried to lock it in a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, but he was not able to do that. But he was finally able to pull it off in the third round. So worked for him. I think that was a submission he was kind of practicing, trying to execute during the fight, and eventually did. Uh, it was a very impressive victory nonetheless, because Travulo, as you said, is a veteran. Possesses very, very good hands, is no muck on the ground, has very good grappling skills. So yeah, it was a very a good fight. It was a very good victory for Vic.
Now, moving on to, of course, the co-main event, Felice Herrig versus Alexa Grasso. Grasso, of course, coming off a debut win in the UFC from Invicta, and Felice being the veteran who's kind of making a comeback now. I thought it was a great fight from Felice. She seemed to be the fighter who wanted it more.
Right, the thing...
I think at the end of the day, that was the difference between both of them. And Alexa, even though, she kept coming back, but Felice just wanted it more.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think, even when Stan interviewed Felice post-fight, he said, what, a lot of people might have been surprised because you were the better striker. And Felice said something, she said, I think most of the people forget that I am a striker, I'm not a grappler. So, if just because of the fact that Felice was so dominant in a last fight against Kaelin Curran, and managed to get secure the victory in the very first round, probably in within 2 minutes, if I remember correctly. Many people thought Felice would be the grappler, the one who initiates takedowns, the one who would try to go to the ground, try to take the fight to the ground, try to lock in the submissions. While Alexa Grasso, and I remember her post-fight interview after Invicta FC 18, where she fought Jodie Esquibel, if I remember properly, and she said, "I've trained my entire camp, and I wanted to get better in wrestling because many people think that I'm a really good striker, but they thought I did not have good grappling skills. So I concentrated all my camp on grappling." And Grasso, when she was in Invicta, was considered, she was next in line to fight for the title. When she was brought to the UFC main roster, many people thought she's going to be the next Paige Van Zandt, the next breakout star, the next, and she possesses really good skills. So I think the UFC machine thought after a couple of fights, you would see Grasso going up against Joanna Jędrzejczyk for the title. So, and the thing is, Felice, many people do not recognize this, is a veteran of the sport. Now, she's about 30, 31. She has been in the sport for a really long time. Just that one fight with Paige Van Zandt made her look very sloppy. And, she also mentioned that after the fight. So, Felice, I think it was more calculated decision on our part to stand and trade with Alexa Grasso. Uh, just because Grasso has really good striking, and Felice was, again, essentially a striker. Uh, it was kind of even Stevens for most of the fight. Felice was very good in maintaining the distance, trying getting into the range, getting into those exchanges where she was more dominant. Um, but Grasso, first loss of her career. She has a long way to go. I realistically think Grasso is going to be a champion soon. But this fight was all about Felice, and as I said, at the beginning, I said this was the card of resurgence, and I thought this was Felice's fight to be that resurgent fighter, to get her win back. And she immediately said, "I want the rematch with Paige Van Zandt." That fight alone made Felice look amateurish. Other than that, as I said, her last fight with Kaylin Curran was very, very good. She was very dominant on the ground. Now she proved her striking prowess against Alexa Grasso, a a prospect, a future champion in the making. So it was a very good fight. Both the fighters, try to use their technical expertise in striking to get the upper hand. It was Feliz in the end who she was working, behind her jabs. She was technically very sound. So was Grasso, but Feliz was, the aggressor. She kept on pushing forward, and she was working behind her jab. She had excellent combinations. Uh, in the end, when the decision was read, you could see Grasso being surprised at her losing. So it
Yeah.
was it was a close fight. It
Yeah.
was I think it was the right decision. It was a close fight, but this win will do wonders. I feel for Feliz Herrig.
Yeah. And she has called out, of course, either Paige Van Sant or
I
Michelle
think a
Waterson,
fight.
which would be an extremely
Yeah,
exciting
I
fight
think a
now at
fight with
this time.
Michelle Waterson might be the way to go. Both excellent strikers.
Yeah.
We talked about Feliz Herrig being good on the ground, being a good grappler. Michelle Waterson is excellent on the ground. As we've seen in the last fight. So I think stylistically, I would probably say Michelle Waterson versus Feliz Herrig would be the next fight to book.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the next fight, Chan Song Tong Jong, or more easier said, the Korean Zombie versus Dennis the Menace Bermudez. Now, this fight was, of course, the highlight of this fight was seeing whether the Korean Zombie would have ring rust coming after 3 years. And Dennis known to have a strong chin. Now, both of these things were proved wrong. And the Korean Zombie had no ring rust, and Dennis's chin was tested, and unfortunately for him, failed against the Korean Zombie. That with that one really good timed
Right,
uppercut. It would just snuck through, and amazing, the timing with which he threw that
right.
and finished it in the very first round to make a very strong comeback.
Right now, you see, that the featherweight division is very deep. Probably Pettis might be moving up, but other than that, you have some really really good fighters in the top five, top 10. So people wanted to see how Korean Zombie would do. A lot of people were excited. I was excited to just see the return of someone like him, because in the past he provided some excellent highlight reel knockouts, highlight reel finishes, even in submissions. I remember his twister finish a few years ago. So I wanted to see if he would still have it against a top 10 fighter in Bermudez, who was ranked at number 9 before the fight. Has again tremendous knockout power. So I wanted to see how this matchup would be. This was probably a very good matchup just because of the styles, the contrasting styles of both men, and the fact that when you put the Korean Zombie against an excellent striker, you get an excellent fight traditionally. So it was fantastic just to see the return of Korean Zombie. He looked phenomenal. His movement was excellent. He did not miss a beat inside the
Yeah.
cage. Uh, whenever a fighter returns after years of layoff, we talk about Asan Sao, we talk about a couple of other fighters who return. Classic example again is Dominic Cruz, who returned after injury and looked like they belonged inside the octagon, that they did not miss a step. So I wanted to see if Korean Zombie would
Yeah.
be of the same category, be in the same category, and he was. Both fighters tried to exchange trade shots to begin the fight. Um, I think Bermudez knew that the way to go with Korean Zombie would be just to take him to the ground, grind him, and he went for a takedown. But Korean Zombie once again stuffed it very well, and he landed that uppercut that came out of nowhere. And Bermudez has good chin. It's not like he doesn't have good chin. Just the way he stopped Bermudez was phenomenal. Now you see how Korean Zombie, just the hype behind the fighter. Now you realistically see why people I just get excited watching his fight. So first round highlight reel finish, that was a fantastic way to go. Uh, just a fantastic return for the Korean Zombie after years, after 3 years. Yeah.
What exactly was he out for? What injury did he have?
I don't remember, but was it during this layoff that he worked in the army because he had a disc?
Oh yeah, I think yeah, it was in the army. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't an injury. He had to
Right.
perform his mandatory army duty. So so I guess that just toughened him up a little bit more. The army will do that to you.
Right, and the other thing
So
is,
let's see what's up next for him. Do you have any
yeah, and
ideas?
the other thing
Sorry.
is he had a desk job. It wasn't like he was in action or anything like that. He had a desk job, so he directly came
Ah,
from
yeah.
there to knocking out a top 10 contender in the featherweight division.
Yeah.
So I next for him, I do not know. I mean, I think most of the featherweights are booked, but he has to take a fight in the top five. If Pettis hangs around in the featherweight
Yeah,
division,
of
then I
course he has
probably
to.
think that would be a good fight for Pettis as well, because he's coming off a loss against Max Holloway. So if he decides to hang around at 145, then I think that could be the next fight for both men.
Yeah. Dennis, of course, has to go back to the drawing room board, but I think Korean Zombie has a very exciting fight up now for him, and we will really look forward to that. Having said that, that's all for UFC Houston. We look forward to UFC
Right.
208 next weekend, and we will talk about that pretty soon. Before that, we will just take a small break and come back to you very soon. And you are back with the MMA India Show, the #1 MMA show and now site in India. Log on to www.mmaindia.com. Not only an Indian site, but an international level site now. People are breaking news with us. UFC fighters are breaking news with us. Invicta fighters are breaking news with us. We are covering one championship as well. We are an international site.
Yeah, I mean it's been long overdue, I guess, in India.
Yes, it has been, and we are very proud that we've put in the work. I mean, we do interviews at 2:30, 3 o'clock sometimes, sometimes at 4:35 in the morning. We put in the work to get all of these big names to you, and we will continue to do that. You are going to see a huge, huge interview tomorrow with Jorge Masvidal, who we had interviewed some time back as well before his win over Jake Ellenberger, and now we have interviewed him again after his win over Cowboy Cerrone, and the gangster, the gangster, Joanna, I can never pronounce her last name. You say it.
EOJ Tech.
Thank you. The strawweight UFC champion. She really is a gangster. She's really fun to talk with, and she's fast on picking up anything that she doesn't agree with. Really fun. So that is the gangster episode, which is coming to you most probably tomorrow after this comes out today, and we will bring that to you. Akhilesh is in Delhi right now covering the SFL. We've been bringing regular updates to you on both our Facebook page and our site, and he has done interviews with Bill Dosanjh and some of the fighters, which we have also given to you. Now, we will be bringing you more in-depth coverage details a little later, but now, there was a little, you can say, I wouldn't say problem, but amongst themselves. Now, we're not saying it, we're not saying it, but amongst the officials of the All India Mixed Martial Arts Association and the commentators. I guess the commentators said something about the ending of the Amit Thapa Sandeep Dahiya fight, which the officials didn't agree with, and one of the officials has put out something on Facebook criticizing these guys. Personally, I think it's great that there are promotions out there where people are putting in their money to promote the sport. There's Zen Warrior Fighting Championship. There's SFL, of course, Super Fight League, where Bill Dosanjh is promoting it. And there's also Yoda Fighting Championship now, which will be coming up. And there's quite a few other championships. So the sport of Indian MMA is only going to grow. I think we have to look at everything really realistically. Of course, there are problems. There are problems even now in the UFC with late stoppages and everything. Some of that is error. Some of that is not proper training. I think you have to look at everything with a fair eye. And if people want a platform to speak, we are willing to provide them, because that is what the show is about. You know, it is the MMA India show, and we are giving you that platform to speak so we can together move ahead and take Indian MMA to the heights, because what we want is Indian fighters to come ahead and do well in all international promotions. And that's not going to happen if, there's a lot of, negativity or anything going on amongst ourselves. There needs to be really positive movement to take Indian MMA forward. And like I said, I'm really glad that there are people promoting Indian MMA in the promotions I just spoke to you about, and we are covering them. Some people say we are covering them. We covered Zen Warrior Fighting Championship. We are covering SFL now, and we will be covering YCF Yoda. I think it's YFC. Sorry, Yoda Fighting Championship very soon as well, to bring Indian MMA to you, the fans, the supporters. Enough said for right now, I think. What do you think? Akhilesh?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one specific point, because I think this weekend there was also some controversy about late stoppages. You talked about stoppages, just now. The thing is, and people may argue about this, now, whenever. When we talk about stoppages, it's not subjective. A lot of people say it's subjective. The opinions about when to stop a fight is subjective. It is not. I mean, yes, there are instances when a fighter, you give fighter the adequate time to recuperate and get back and, continue the fight. But there are instances when there are clear rules. There are clear rules when you should stop a fight. It's not subjective. Rules are not subjective. So, yeah, I mean, I do not want to, take names or anything like that, because we are encouraging the sport. But saying that, the rules are rules. They're not subjective.
I agree. But one thing I have to clarify, because we've spoken about this before, according to me, that lies in the hands of the referee and not the promoter, because we've had this discussion before. I don't think the promoter is to blame for that, unless they've actually told the referee, to let the fights go on for some time, which I'm not sure happens. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I always say it's the referee's job to stop the fight on time. I don't think we can blame, or we can say that it's a problem with the anything else. I think it's the referee's job to fight it, to stop it at the right time. Having said that, there are always debates on it. There is human error. We see that in the UFC and other promotions as well. There are instances where people say that was a late stoppage, not just here, but abroad as well.
Yeah, but that is okay. So we were talking about controversial, decisions or instances this weekend from SFL. All I'm saying is, yes, I'm not undermining a referee's job. Obviously, sitting in front of screens or watching the fights live, we will have a different perspective than to what the referees have inside the cage.
Yeah, because we're watching replays. They are taking decisions. Will this guy be, and I agree with you that they're not subjective. I fully agree with you. But there is a human element somewhere where sometimes people have come back from the brink of, like the Jason Solomon fight with, I forgot the other guy's name, where even Bill Dosanjh mentioned that the fight could have been stopped at any time. It could have been stopped at any time.
Right.
A lot of, some people did think it should have been stopped. But the fact is that he did come back. Now,
Right, but
again,
that's
like I said, I agree with you that it's not subjective, but it's a little easier for us to say that, like you just said, sitting outside, then the guy, of course, but it is the referee's job. I think we have to make that very clear, to keep the fighters safe. That is the most thing paramount. They have to keep that in their head all the time. And any late stoppage is causing harm to the fighters. So they always have to keep that in mind.
no. So that is true. The only thing is, how can a referee judge if a fighter can make a comeback or not? So I think that is completely, irrelevant as far as the judgment of the fight is concerned.
Okay.
If you see a fighter not defending himself intelligently as written in the rules,
I fully agree with you. If he's not defending himself intelligently, he has to call it off. You only feel he can make a
Right.
comeback if he is able to defend himself intelligently.
exactly. So the rules are rules.
Yes.
It's crystal clear. Yeah, I mean, human error is a part of the game. But just this weekend, I thought there were more than a couple of instances where that happened. So all I want to say is, the sport will evolve. The sport is growing still in India, and yeah, I mean, obviously SFL is doing a very good job with that. But saying that, I don't think IMA officials or any official should take the platform on social media and air the grievance, because that is subjective. Airing your grievance is subjective. What happens inside the cage is not up for debate. It's not subjective. That's the only point that I wanted to make.
Okay, fair enough. So let's see if we get a message back from any of the, because like I said, I think it's very important to be fair to everybody. I think if somebody wants a platform to speak up and say something where they feel they want to say something, maybe it's in front of the commentator who said something, I would say it's fair enough to have that healthy debate and hear both sides of the story, before one says
I mean,
anything.
have a dialogue.
So I don't
Having
think
a
it's
dialogue
about
is always
trying to
good.
corner anybody. It's about trying to give people the opportunity to provide their side of the story so that it doesn't steamroll into something else.
Exactly. I mean, having a dialogue always helps. The only thing is, do not take to social media I mean, you can, because that is your opinion. That's fine. But when you're questioning someone's credibility as a commentator, yeah, sure. I mean, you might not have a voice. So does the commentator. I mean, he's just calling what he sees. He's not giving his personal,
Well, in this
subjective.
instance, the person felt he didn't have any other platform except for that. Now, what we're saying is we are willing to provide you that platform. Sorry?
Just calling out, the people that are doing their jobs, I think was a little, I mean, it was uncalled for. I'll, just end it with that. I thought that was uncalled for. But yeah, as I said, as you said, we are providing them a platform. They're more than welcome to, come and talk about what they think.
Great. Having said that, that's it for today. And we'll be bringing you the Jorge Joanna Gangster episode really soon. And remember, MMAindia.com is live now. So check out the website. We have a lot of articles, a lot of news, contests. All our videos are up there. We have merchandise to buy now. We have MMA India Show t-shirts and caps and mugs to buy. Some of you have been getting them for free in contests up till now, but you can even buy them now. So go ahead and support the MMA India Show. Having said that, this is me and Akhilesh signing off. Thank you for joining us once again. Hi, this is Parvin Dabas on the MMA India Show, and we'd like to welcome Daniel Isaac from the All India Martial Arts Association. Welcome, Daniel. Welcome to the show. Can you hear me?
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
So you're in America now, of course.
Yes.
I see some packed bags in the back. Are you packing to come back or packing somewhere else?
Yeah, I really wish that I was cage side watching all of the fights, because it's really been so good to see how MMA has been evolving in India, and some of the fights have been really exciting. So yeah, I
I'd
really
like to
wish that
first
these
of all
back
say we are really excited that people are putting in money and backing MMA in India. I think that's very important for the growth of MMA in our country.
Right.
And Super Fight League has been doing that for some time now. So,
Yeah.
Kudos to them for backing MMA. I'd like to, straight away get in to, of course, your Facebook post.
Yeah.
We refrained from commenting on it because we didn't want to blindly comment on something, and you did ask for a platform, and it's great that we have this platform, the MMA India Show in India now. So first of all, of course, there was I don't want to make too much of it by calling it a controversy, but of course, Amit Thapa didn't come back into the ring for whatever reason in the start of the second round versus Sandeep Dahiya. And the commentator said something about it. Some people said he was injured or had a broken nose. What we've heard is that's not the case. There was no injury as such. So, and you commented about that the referee made the right decision. So, can you just give us a backdrop on what happened and the rules on if a fighter doesn't come into the ring? Can you give a backdrop on this?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I was not there ringside, so I'm not in the position of an IMA official to directly contribute to the exact decision. But my opinion is based on what I watched on live TV, watching the fight going on at the Super Fight League. So also it does reflect on a couple of posts that Amit himself had made on Facebook just before the fight. So it seems that there was some history of rivalry between him and Sandeep, and so he had already beaten Sandeep at a previous fight. So he felt that there was no reason for him to fight Sandeep again. Now, obviously, the SFL did make that match, and so they said that this fight's got to happen. So he started talking on social media and saying that he wanted more money to take that fight. So he said, SFL, if you want me to take this fight, you got to pay me more money. But SFL, was pretty strict on, and again, this is what I hear, that SFL was pretty strict on what their decision was, and they said the match has been made, you've already signed the contract, and so this fight has to happen. So in my opinion, I believe that he just wanted to just make sure that the fight just started, but at the same time, he didn't want to give everything because he felt that he was either unfairly given this match, or he just felt that he wasn't getting enough of money. Whatever the reason, he just completed the first round, and you saw that he dominated the first round. I mean, it was an easy 10-9 fight. So after almost winning that round, I think he just decided, I don't want to fight. Whether he had an issue with SFL or he just felt that he didn't want to continue, whatever the reason was, he did not answer the call for the second round. And so as per the international unified rules, if a fighter doesn't answer the call, the fight's over and the other fighter wins. So the moment the referee Samuel Lalrazama went to the corner and saw that this guy wasn't ready to fight, he asked him, are you going to take this fight? And he said no. So Samuel walked to each of the corners and said, fight over. Now, for some reason, the commentators did not get to actually see all of this happening. I don't understand why. And they started taking pot shot at the guy. I'm official, this is wrong, and the referee is giving Amit Thapa extra time. And look at the housekeeping guys. The housekeeping guys are starting to clean up blood, and this is giving both the fighters extra time to recover. And I thought that was totally unfair to the officials, because the decision was already called. The referee said, fight's over. He went to each corner Now, what was the whole reason for them to start talking about the officials? So, I was pretty upset because of that, and I also felt that Sony Television, who's covering all of these fights, they must understand the importance of giving a proper opinion or a proper technical answer to what's happening in the cage by having the people involved, the officiating, to talk. So, I mean, all of India is watching those fights. And if there's a decision made, the commentators don't understand who's going to talk on behalf of the commission and say what exactly happened. So I felt that a bit unfair. And so I just went out there and I voiced my opinion. And I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to speak.
Now, from what you're telling me, because I did see the post-fight conference, if you want to call it, where both of them faced off again and apparently had a feud, though I didn't believe much in what was happening up there. But having said that, see, the matchup was made. Now, from what you're telling me, I'm just giving my opinion. The matchup was made.
Right.
A fighter has a choice to take a fight or not to take a fight. Of course, but once he's in that ring, like you said, if Sony has a responsibility, since viewers are watching, the fighters inside the ring have a responsibility to give it their all for all 3 rounds and to try and win, rather than just do 1 round and say, see, I can beat him. And just showing dominance over 1 round is not enough. I think we've seen enough fights where fighters have dominated over 2 rounds and lost in the 3rd round.
Correct.
So, personally, this is my opinion. People are there. They're watching on TV as well. And if that was a reason for him not to continue fighting after being in the ring, then I personally think he should be suspended. He shouldn't be given any more fights if that was the reason. If you're in the ring and if you stop after the 1st round just to prove a point, I think it's very disrespectful to the viewers there, to the people watching on TV, to everybody, even people like us who are, trying to promote MMA and taking out our time and putting in a lot of things from our, ourselves. How do you judge a fight like that? You can't judge a fight like that. If that is what it is, then I think it's disrespectful, and shame on Amit Thapa for not continuing.
I mean, I would, again, I would totally agree with what you're saying. I think if my opinion matches with what exactly was his mindset at that point of time, and if I was his corner, or if I was his manager, or if I was just anyone known to him there, I would have totally said, I mean, that was rubbish. Just going in there and just wanting to, prove a point or whatever it is, and then, stepping out. I think that doesn't make sense. And I personally do feel that Amit is a very talented athlete. So, unfortunately, the only thing where I would disagree was if there had to be a suspension, actually, we as a commission would not be able to suspend him based on these grounds. Because what we could do is we could call the fight off and give a win to the other fighter. But at this point, the fighter is signed to an MMA promotion. He's not signed to the commission. So if Super Fight League needs to take action there, they can take action and say, well, you have violated the terms of the contract. Because I can go ahead and tell you that one of the terms of an MMA fighter's contract in India does say that if he does not perform satisfactorily enough for a particular fight, the MMA promotion can suspend him, or they can immediately tell us that us as a commission can cancel his license. So that definitely would be a decision to be made by the Super Fight League.
But what is your opinion on that? I mean, if that is the reason I'm saying this is, isn't the best way to prove you're better than him to beat him again and move on to somebody else, rather than
100%.
Rather than a kind of a rematch was proposed at the post-fight conference afterwards.
Yeah, why were they doing a post-fight conference if that was how the fight ended? And I totally agree with you. I don't think that made
question.
Yeah, I don't think that made any sense. But this again is a call made by SFL. So SFL, I mean, obviously as a promotion, I mean, you saw what they did with Dhruv and Kuldeep, grabbing each other's shirts, just before the fight. again, as an MMA person, I don't think that makes sense, because you cannot allow two fighters to touch each other just before the fight. You know, you can have some real consequences to that. So I definitely disagree with this kind of hype and propaganda. I think it kind of makes the Indian viewers to mix this up with WWE, and not understand the difference between proper MMA and WWE. So yeah, I personally totally disagree with these kind of antics.
Okay. Now there has been some. Now putting this aside, there has been some talk about late stoppages. Now,
right.
My view is, of course, that the referee is the one inside
right,
who is responsible, nobody else. I'm not saying there are late stoppages or not. I am saying that there is human error. Sometimes we see that in other promotions as well, UFC, where there is controversy over, oh, that was a late stoppage, this was not, and sometimes early, oh, he could have kept the fight going. So that is there in a lot of places. It's not just here, and it's human error. Another viewpoint is that the rules are very clear, that if a fighter cannot defend himself, then the referee has to stop the fight. Now, I'm asking this also because we haven't really spoken about this yet, but a lot of people on our Facebook and now our site also, MMAindia.com, and even our YouTube channel, have written about this and asked us to talk about it. So I'm asking your opinion on it.
Right. So are you referring to the fight that Dennis Hallman's son had with Vikas? Is that the fight you're referring to?
I'm not referring to any particular fight. I just read a lot of comments that there are a lot of late stoppages. There was
right.
There was now if one. So I'm just talking in general. I'm not referring to specific fights, but that could be one as well.
Okay, understood. So first of all, the best view that someone can get of a fight is the view from a referee, and that's why in the old days when they would do pride fights, they would give the ref cam. You'd have a camera just above his head, because what you can see as a referee, you might not even see as a judge. Forget what a camera can see, even though it's a multi-angle. Forget what the viewers are watching. So again, in my opinion, I might have felt the same way, feeling that a particular fight should have been stopped earlier. However, what we do as a commission is, after every show, we do, whether I'm out of the country or whether I'm there, we always do a postmortem breakdown of how the fights went, and we talk to the officials and we discuss with them, because they're officials of various experiences. And so what we did is, there are a couple of times that I did discuss this with Samuel and speak with Samuel and ask him why I felt that maybe a particular fight should have been stopped earlier, and he did not. And so his answer was very clear, that at that point of time he felt that that fighter was not in danger. And what he could see was that although maybe punches were hitting the face, those punches were not causing damage. It was more kind of, an irritating kind of punch that was getting the fighter, on the receiving end to turn away rather than get hurt. So I think this was the reason that a referee does not stop fights, as opposed to what we would think should have been a stoppage at that point of time, is because he gets his own view and his perspective. And in MMA, if a referee sees it and calls it, that's how it is. If he doesn't, it didn't happen. So I think a referee will take responsibility for whether he stops a fight at a particular point or not. And if he does not, he has to give a just opinion and a technical opinion as to why he did not. And so this again brings about my point. Why are officials not asked these questions? People, I mean, there should be a TV perspective also for MMA officials saying, why didn't you stop this fight? People say, thought you should have stopped this fight. Why didn't you? And so that referee can kind of justify himself and say, this is the reason why. So I just feel that there should be a fair amount of opinion given out to the public, so that the viewers don't just get to see a one-dimensional view. They can hear both sides.
Well, that's what we're doing now.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So now, of course, the main reason this is an issue itself is to limit damage to the fighter, because the last thing anybody wants is fighters hurt unnecessarily. So we're just putting that out there, that the reason it's an issue is just to make sure that if a fighter cannot defend himself.
I think I've lost you.
Can you hear me now?
I think I lost you for 5 seconds.
Okay.
So could you repeat what you said? Please?
I was saying that the reason this is an issue is to make sure fighters do not get hurt unnecessarily. If they are not in a position to defend themselves, they do not take undue damage then after that.
Correct. So, I mean, obviously the rule does say that if a fighter is not intelligently defending himself, the referee can jump in and stop. Also, I do feel damage is a very key point here. And so if a referee feels that there is not enough damage being done, then he's definitely going to choose not to stop that fight at that particular point of time. So again, I feel that apart from what happens in the cage, Indian MMA, as sanctioned by IMA, has a complete step-by-step health and safety protocol that happens after a fight. So after a fight is over, every licensed MMA fighter is taken to the hospital. He undergoes, his MRI and scans. If he is knocked out, he's kept in the hospital for 48 hours. And depending on how long the knockout was, the IMA will give a medical suspension to fighters who cannot compete for 30 or 60 days. Why did Jason Ramesh Solomon not come back? It's because he had a medical suspension. Why is Michael Pereira not fighting again? Even though Michael Pereira is cage-side begging the official saying, please allow me to fight. It's because he's facing a 45-day suspension. He was knocked out really out cold by Babajit. So, based on what happens in the cage, based on what happens after, we have a whole set of officials who go through all the safety procedures and make sure that that fighter is in the right hands and that he is safe. And so he only comes back to fight once he's cleared, by multiple tests.
Okay. Now I want to come to the matchmaking.
Okay.
First of all, who is doing the matchmaking in SFL? Is it somebody from your side or is it somebody from SFL?
No, IMA doesn't do matchmaking. IMA just does licensing, sanctioning, supervising, and organizing the sport part. All matchmaking is done by Super Fight League.
Okay. Now, so what's your opinion on the matchmaking so far? Because I'll be very frank with you, I've seen some very good fights, but I have seen some fights where it seems like somebody very experienced is pitched against a newcomer, like Manjeet Kolikar's fight against a debutant. Manjeet Kolikar has been in the SFL before. She's fought in Invicta as well. Now, do you think, now I'm just using that as an example, so what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I definitely, personally, not talking as an IMO official, talking as an MMA fan, talking as a viewer, watching the fights, and giving my opinion, I feel that there were quite a few fights which I would have called mismatches. And I think, there were some fighters who, literally the officials, I think, had to go out of their way to make sure that they had to protect the other fighter and stop that fight in time because the other fighter was so experienced. So and I don't agree with these kind of matches made like this. However, I think that there are also some reasons that SFL might give because of this huge league and because of fighters getting injured and because of particular weight categories that they don't have enough of fighters. I think that there are they're just going out and trying to bring in all the talent that they can. And I guess with these kind of things that happen, definitely there are mismatches which would work out. But yeah, I don't agree, and there are quite a few fights that I would say this is nonsense. How can this guy fight that guy? So yeah, I totally agree with that point.
Now coming to that, the league format, and we did ask Bill this as well. If somebody gets injured, is because fighters are fighting a lot during this time period. Of course,
right.
Even in fights like resin or something, sometimes they fight 2-3 times over a couple of days. Now,
right.
Bill did mention that there are backup fighters. So if somebody gets injured, there's somebody to replace them. So what's your opinion on, fighters getting injured, or how, is there like a threshold, or if they're this injured, they can fight? And this is where I'm guessing you guys come in, where you say this guy is fit enough to fight or not fit enough to fight. Now bringing this this question, do you think if fighters are hurt and they want to fight multiple times, will that make them not give their all in the fight both ways? Like sometimes we've heard that in certain sports, sportsmen don't give their all when they're playing for the country because they don't want to get hurt and not be able to play for the club.
Again, I think there's definitely a human element here. There's an entertainment aspect here. There's television. There's live fights. There's so many things which are factors here. But we as a commission, we have to maintain that we are following as much as possible all the rules and regulations to health and safety policies for the sport of MMA. So we will definitely make sure that, first of all, I think a couple of the factors. Let me name the factors. Factors are a knockdown and a knockout. Depending on how serious a knockout was, a fighter is given a medical suspension, so he cannot compete either 15 days, 30 days, 45 days, or 60 days. So there is a set protocol that
that's based on the
health and safety
doctor's
teams.
opinion. Is that based on the doctor's report?
I'm sorry, I missed.
I said, is that based on the doctor's report?
Yeah, what's the basis of that decision is based on number one, severity of the knockout or the knockdown, and so the doctor team, the medical team, will decide whether that fighter is now ready to come back and compete in the cage or not. And so there are set rules as laid down by the
I think we've lost Daniel. We're just going to reconnect with him, so we'll take a short break and come right back. So getting back to where we left is the doctor certifies the extent of the injury based on whether it's a knockdown or how he got knocked out, right?
So basically the factors here, number one is how the unified rules looks at it. Number two is how the International MMA Federation looks at it. Number three is that we have a couple of consultants on board. So we talk to Mark Goddard for all final decisions. We always consult with him. We also have the head of the Indian medical part for the medical department for IMA, who's Dr. Dilip Nadkarni. And so all these people are definitely brought into the loop when we decide, and that decision is not taken by us as MMA people, but the decision is taken by a medical professional. We cannot base a decision on what we feel, which is a medical condition. So the medical people have to certify whether the test reports came out clear, whether after 48 hours or 24 hours of observing they feel that he was absolutely fine, or if they feel that there were some symptoms, whether he vomited a couple of times in the fighter's room or whatever. Based on those decisions, they give the report to us, and then we as a commission will announce what is the medical suspension.
Now, another thing that we've dealt with, or whatever you want to call, is, are there enough doctors who specialize in sports injuries like these, who have enough knowledge of them? Are there enough doctors? Are those the kind of doctors, the doctors you have on your panel, do they specialize in sports injuries?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Now, coming to a larger picture, I think we all are here to grow, of course, Indian MMA. There are a lot of good things happening, but there are some things which need to be talked about to shape it in the right direction. So we all go, I think, the right way. Of course, there are people who might say, who is to decide that, right? But as a media organization, I think sometimes a lot of it is based on us, that we bring out some issues. We talk about it with everybody involved rather than sugarcoat it. Now, this is something I wanted to ask you as well, because a lot of people sometimes feel that you are only promoting Indian MMA if you only talk about the good things. And if there's some problem, don't talk about it. Otherwise, you are criticizing Indian MMA and you are bringing it down. So I wanted to, get your viewpoint on this. Should people only be talking positive? I mean, which is great. Like I said, I always try to look at the positive of things. Even if there is something which needs to be bettered, I try and view that in the positive light and see the positive things, and this is what will make it better. But there are some things, like we've spoken about today, which need to be spoken about rather than sugarcoated. So what's your viewpoint on that?
I do totally agree that we have to criticize a sport like MMA, and especially Indian MMA. If we do want it to grow, we have to criticize every possible aspect. But again, I feel everything should be fair. I think if you're going to ask a question, or if you're going to throw an accusation and say, this is wrong, this is how it should be done, you should allow the people involved to also give their opinion, and then let the people decide, or let the people form their opinion based on both the views being given. A typical example is, I'm not sure the name of the Indian female fighter who I think she fought someone named maybe Angela Pink. Maybe I've got the names wrong.
India right now?
Yes.
Okay.
And during one of those fights, I clearly saw the American fighter tapping out on the Indian girl's face, when she wanted to stop the fight. So the referee jumped in and stopped the fight. Now, people don't understand what a tap means sometimes. So people weren't sure whether this was a tap or not. The girl was given a chance to speak, and she came in and said, no, I did not tap. The Indian fighter said, well, she was, I don't know whether she was trying to sunaw a lori to me.
Yeah.
But that was not a punch. She was not attacking me. But again, there should be an opinion given of the officials to say, how many times that hand should tap for it to be a tap. And if you tap someone's face? Is it on any part of the body or on the ground? What exactly is a tap? There should be some answers given. All that crazy guy, I mean, I'll go ahead and say, that crazy guy with the mic on Super Fight League, I don't even know his name. He just keeps screaming and shouting and asking everybody to jump in and fight. I mean, come on, he asked Azharuddin, do you want to get in and fight? I mean, you can't interview every any guest who comes on the Super Fight League and say, what would you do if you had to jump in the cage? He wouldn't jump in the cage. He's not a fighter. That's not what MMA is all about. So all that crazy guy was doing was shouting out and saying, controversy, controversy. Then he's talking to some fitness guy from Mumbai and saying, what do you think about this controversy? He has no opinion to talk about that controversy. The people who should be talking about that controversy is the ones involved with the sport. So go ahead and criticize Indian MMA. Go ahead and criticize the commission. Go ahead and criticize Super Fight League and everybody involved. But allow everybody to give their side of the story so that the argument or the debate is balanced. That's my opinion.
Great. So I just want to come to a last point, and this is something I've noticed personally, and I wanted to ask your viewpoint on it. Sometimes I've seen in a lot of fights, I have seen it in SFL as well, not just outside. So I don't want to contain it to SFL. I've seen it in other places as well. Sometimes fighters do hit other fighters on the back of the head, which is not allowed, right?
Right.
I have seen sometimes the fighters hitting the other fighter on the back of the head quite a few times before it stopped, and then going on to a victory without being penalized. Now, if that illegal hitting on the back of the head is not stopped in time and is leading to a victory almost, now how would you deal with that? And have you placed mechanisms in place to review things like that? That if you look at a certain fight and say, listen, this fight, this fighter got in about 10-15 hits to the other guy's back of the head before he was stopped, but the fight went on and the other guy lost. Now that could be a factor in him losing. So what is your take on that?
I mean, let me be very honest with you. We are, as a commission, we criticize our officials all the time. And as I said, every time we have a post-mortem meeting, we are criticizing what they're doing. But at the same time, we're asking them why they made those decisions. Now, a shot at the back of the head is also a very, very crucial decision. And that depends on two things. That depends on whether the attacker had actually landed a shot at the back of the head intentionally, or whether the opponent had turned in such a way that the strike had hit the back of the head. That is, both in boxing and in MMA, that's a very, very important point. So I believe that there are some times that a referee feels that a particular shot at the back of the head happened because this, the fighter on the receiving end is, purposely turning his head in that way to get hit at the, at the back of the head, or sometimes he just feels that it is not on the back of the head, or he feels that it is not, maybe not being hit as hard on the back of the head as he would think it to be. So I think again these are referee perspectives and referee opinions, and we try and ensure that we get as clear an opinion, a technical opinion of that official as to why he took that decision when he made that announcement. Because in MMA, whether it's American or Indian or British, if a referee calls, we cannot change that decision. As a commission, we can't say, okay, we overrule that decision. I wish we could, but there's no scope for that. So whether it's human error, whether it's a particular perspective, there are many factors that govern these.
I agree, and that's why we're debating it today, and that's why you guys review it, so that they don't happen again. Rather than trying to reverse a decision, I think the focus is on making sure that they don't happen again. I do agree with you. The one thing I don't agree with you on is how hard it's hitting on the back of the head. I don't think that should be a factor, because it's very hard to judge in that heat of the moment how hard somebody is hitting on the back of the head. And my whole point was not about like one accidental hit. If a fighter is turning his head, it's like if the other fighter has his back towards the guy, but he's constantly raining down hits on the back of the head, and then maybe after 10-15 he's stopped. So there seemed to be a couple of times, like I said, where it wasn't just a mistake, but the fighter maybe not knowing, and the referee not stopping it in time, and the other guy winning. So my point is, of course, you can't overturn a decision, right? But if decisions like that are going in the other fighter's favor, who's hitting the back of the head in the wrong way, should you guys review it to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Absolutely, and we do that.
Okay, fair enough. So that's it from my side. Would you like to say anything else while we're on air? Well, it's being recorded, of course. Yeah.
I would definitely say that, with the evolution of the sport in India, I feel that Indian MMA has reached a point where the fighters, the trainers, the officials, the organization, they're all growing in a particular way, and I don't think it's reached its maturity as yet. None of this whole mix has reached its maturity yet, and I feel there's a long way for everybody to grow. And I feel that rather than us bringing in, international people to come in and work here, whether it's as fighters or officials, or in any capacity, I think it's important that the Indian people learn, that the fighters train, all the different aspects, that the officials train, that's why we keep bringing international people to come and train our people. And then the sport grow with Indian people themselves. That's the only way that the sport is going to go in the right direction. Rather than us bringing in, whether it's foreign fighters or foreign officials to come in here, I feel that's going to kind of make things, like an imbalance.
So what you're saying is we should only bring them in to train our people rather than actually officiate or fight.
Totally, that's how I feel. Okay. I also feel that there should be some way that decisions can be reviewed in MMA. And I know many MMA people are going to give me a lot of slack for this, and many people are going to be against what I'm saying right now. But I do feel that there should be some sort of a system where when a referee stops a fight, that he doesn't call that decision at that moment, and rather the cage side referees review it, through an action replay, and then give a final decision. So a point like what you made, where a shot at the back of the head and a referee stops the fight, but he doesn't call that the end of the fight, right? He doesn't say whether the decision is made. He doesn't say whether someone's disqualified. 10 seconds is given for the cage side officials to immediately, we have technology. They can immediately review the footage and say whether that was a purposeful or, damaging hit at the back of the head, and then give a decision to the main referee to say, all right, fight over, disqualified. So although many MMA people would disagree, I think that's something that maybe should be introduced into Indian MMA, so it helps the viewers to understand better and also gives a more fair perspective through technology for the fighters.
I do agree with you on this point, especially for something like this, where if the fighter has to stop somebody, that he does get a chance to review it, or the people outside, kind of like a DRS, if you want to call it. There is a kind of a review system in place, so the correct decision is made. Coming back to the foreign fighters, I do feel, this is my personal opinion, that the only time you really see, how we are placed in the world order of MMA is when we fight people outside also. And that only happens when you that only happens when you pit our fighters against fighters from all over the world as well to see where we stand. Otherwise, it's almost like a fish in a bowl where we might be fighting amongst ourselves and somebody knocks somebody else and they get really happy. But the true worth of the fighter is not just in our country, but on the world stage, because we are training fighters and building promotions to be on the world stage. We want international level fighters. And now and then, of course, I agree with you, we have to train them here, we have to make them better, but we do have to put them up against foreign competition now and then to really see where we stand.
I think that foreign competition should happen when the best of Indian fighters get an opportunity to go and either fight internationally, or the best of Indian fighters are given fair matchups. I don't feel that a 20-3 ranked American fighter should be fighting a 4-0 Indian fighter.
I totally agree with you, but that's where the matchups come in. The matchups have to be fair. They have to be evenly matched.
Correct.
Great. Well, it was lovely talking to you, and we hope to have a face-to-face conversation whenever you come to India. When are you planning to come to India?
I'm actually here because we're in the process of setting up an international training facility for IMA. So we're trying to create an opportunity for Indian fighters to come to the US, stay here for a couple of months, train, and also compete on the local circuit here, because it's a very active circuit, so they can compete here on the local circuit and then hopefully come back and perform better in India. So I'm actually here setting up a training center where we're going to have full-fledged training all year round. So we're actually in the middle of things right now. I think we might have a few months more for us to try and complete this, and once this project is done, I'll be back.
Okay, great. Well, all the best to you. Lovely talking, and we'll be in touch. So that's it from me, Parvin Dabas, and that was Daniel Isaac from the All India Mixed Martial Arts Association. Lovely having you. Thank you, and goodbye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Daniel. Take care. Cheers.
All right, what's up, India? It's your boy Patrick Benson here, coming from McKenna, Washington in the U.S. I'm a current pro record of 3-2. I've been wrestling with Dennis Hallman since I was a little kid. Just what I do, I've always wanted to be a pro fighter, and I'm out here living the dream across the world.
Hey guys, my name's Harrison the Wolverine Bevins, commentator for a Super Fight League here in India. Just tell you a little bit about myself. Fought for the last 10 years. The last 5 of that I fought professionally. Had over 41 fights, won a couple of titles, and now I'm here doing commentary for the Super Fight League, and I'm so excited.
Hello everyone, welcome to the MMA India Show. With me today I have Patrick Benson from
Shari Punjab.
Shari Punjab. So, first thing Patrick, I want to talk to you about your experiences in India. This is the first time you've been in India, I guess.
Yes, it is.
So, and we just talked to Harrison, and he talked about the culture shock that he faced. Was that something similar?
Yeah, it's a really humbling experience being over here, seeing the hardships that the people here go through. Because back home, you might think that life's difficult, right, but the things that we go through every day are so much more simple to overcome than a lot of the people here have to endure on a day-to-day basis.
Right, and you've been here for probably a month?
About 2 weeks now I've been here.
2 weeks.
A little over 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. What has been the most outrageous thing that you've seen in India? Because we are a country where you see a lot of outrageous things.
Yes.
So what is the most outrageous thing that you've seen?
I'd say probably the most outrageous thing I've seen is toddlers actually working to help their family make a living. Back home, that would be child labor. You know, it's not allowed, and it's strictly frowned upon. You just don't do that. And here, it's kind of just something that has to happen. You need everyone in the family putting in their 2 cents and putting in that little extra bit of work so that everyone can survive.
Right.
Whereas back home, if you're a toddler, even up until you're 18, you have less responsibilities than people who are, children who are fresh out of the womb here. You were just born, and it's like, go right to work.
Right. And, can you tell us about how you got into mixed martial arts? Just the beginnings of your journey into the world of MMA.
Yeah, the beginnings. I mean, when I was like 3 or 4, I used to watch UFC with my dad, little kid, and I'd mentioned to him then that I wanted to do this someday. I wanted to be a professional fighter. And he's kind of steered me and put me in the right places to get there. I met Dennis when I was about 6 or 7 years old, Dennis Allman.
Right.
And as soon as I could, I got into his room. I was about 13, started help coach a youth wrestling program that he was involved with. And slowly but surely just started gaining jiu-jitsu, boxing, kickboxing, and, keeping the journey going.
Right. And, we recently watched you fight Farad.
Yes.
And the first thing that came to my mind when I watched you was, this is a grappling clinic, because you were throwing submissions from everywhere, from the top, from the bottom, from your back. You kind of threw, I think, every submission that even fans might have known. So, just can you talk to us about your background in grappling or in jiu-jitsu and how you kind of evolved as a fighter?
Yeah, so I grew up wrestling. So I got on the mat for the first time at 7 years old. I started wrestling. And from then, it just continued to slowly grow and grow. At 13, I started actually coaching and giving back to the sport.
Right.
And then at about 19 was when I did my first jiu-jitsu tournament, and I finished all my opponents in like about a minute.
Right.
Went to the FILA World Team Trials in Vegas, and was runner-up. I hadn't even been in the gym really, and Dennis goes, "Hey, you want to come to this World Team Trials with me and putting a little team together?"
Right.
So I went down there, and my first 2 matches were both front headlock finishes. One was a Darce choke, and then the next one was a guillotine.
Right.
And that got me into the finals, where I just ran into a better wrestler than me. He managed to stall out and kind of outpoint me.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I've known that I have a strict advantage, like a very significant advantage over all of my opponents on the ground. So like Farad, I knew he was a boxer.
Right.
So there was no point in me standing in front of him and trying to trade punches, because then I'm just going to take unnecessary damage. So I walked in there, immediately got the takedown, and controlled the pace on the floor. Tough kid, though. I couldn't believe the amount of heart that guy showed.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that fight in some time, but
Yes.
I wanted to go a little more into jiu-jitsu,
Yes.
right? Or grappling. Now we have ADCC, which brings in all the grapplers from around the world. Now there is a tournament going in Dubai. Now you have Submission Underground, which kind of opened up different avenues for fighters. So, and we traveled back 5 to 10 years, and people were not really that aware about jiu-jitsu, about grappling, because everyone was more fascinated with striking. Even now, if you go to mixed martial arts fights, even now in India, for example, you see a lot of wushu fighters. Not a lot of wrestlers, not a lot of grapplers.
Yes.
So, how do you think this journey has been for the sport of grappling, or for the aspect of grappling in general, or jiu-jitsu, in the past 10 years?
I think what it is that when you don't have a knowledge of what's going on, the fans, they're looking at us grappling on the floor and have no idea what's happening. And as the fans seem to progressively gain the knowledge and see the submissions and the different little battles going on the ground, it's going to become increasingly more popular.
Right.
But it's easy to go, oh, he got punched in the face, he's bleeding, it gets you excited. You think you can tell when the fight might be coming to an end.
Right.
Whereas when you're watching grappling, if you've never done it and never learned about it, you're just looking at it blindly like, this is boring.
Right.
Whereas when I see a grappling match, I can see all the intricate little battles where they're hand fighting and digging for, shrimping and crabbing, trying to gain position.
Right.
That it's hard for a common fan to understand exactly what's happening there.
Right. And, in India, Kushti, which is
The beach wrestling, right?
Yeah.
Essentially like sand wrestling.
Exactly. So it's been here for centuries.
Yes.
But as you know the fighters come along, you do not see a lot of catch wrestlers because kushti, what it essentially is catch wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think a country which has this rich history in wrestling does not produce these mixed martial artists who are very well averse in grappling? Do you think it's just you know, a difference in how we see both the sports?
I would say that the difference would be back home in the States, what we have like leagues that are set up,
Right.
that are very organized leagues for us to all go grappling.
Right.
Like I grew up USA wrestling. I would wrestle 9 months out of the year. Every weekend, there's an organized tournament where I can go wrestle.
Right.
And I don't know too much about the history of Wushti, correct? Is that Kushti?
Yeah.
I don't know much about the history of it as far as what the organization is like, but I don't think that it's quite as organized of a discipline or sport as it is back home, where we can literally every single weekend be in a wrestling tournament and constantly be, you know, evolving our grappling game and getting better.
Right.
I think if you were to have a league like that set up here, it would make it to where you would see more and more.
Right.
But without that that setup, it's going to be hard to produce more grapplers.
Right. Now, you know, just dwelling a bit into what you just said, you know, you have collegiate wrestling in the United States. You
Yeah.
have amateur wrestlers, NCAA divisions,
Mhm.
where, you know, which produces some of the biggest, some of the most exciting wrestlers
Yes.
in the world. So how is that set up organized? Because if we kind of understand how that is set up from a very young age for the school students or the aspiring wrestlers to get into that system and then come out as, you know, your world champions, your state champions,
Yeah.
how is that organized? How is it set up from that grassroots level?
It kind of they'll push it onto the schools, so you'll get flyers at the schools, so all the students see wrestling. It's something there's multiple videos out so that you can see what it's about.
Yeah.
It's easy to find, easy to locate, and there's so many different gyms that you can go to learn it and to participate in it, that it's easy to access.
Right.
Without that easy access, it makes it hard. Like I don't think Kushti, they don't have, you know, it's not marketed to students at a very
Right.
young age. It's the only people that see it is families that have been involved in it, you know, they're through generations.
Correct.
Whereas I could go find a student at school, and he might just be a troubled kid with, you know, nothing going for him. You know, maybe he's just a troublemaker, always finding himself in the principal's office, you know, going to detention.
Right.
And you find that kid and you give him some direction, you know, put him in a wrestling room.
Right.
All of a sudden that kid's not getting in trouble anymore because he has an outlet.
Right.
And if you could find, you know, a similar thing to do here,
Right.
it would make it all possible.
Right. And now, you know, let's talk a bit about your fight, because we have a lot of fans that were either very impressed with what you did or did not really understand
Yes.
what you did with Farad. Now, first thing, you know, a lot of people talk about the heart of Farad.
Mhm.
What did you think about his defensive game on the ground?
I think that his defense was fairly good, but it was mostly because the triangle choke was deep, but he just managed to just show some grit and heart and get out of that, which made me make a sloppy mistake by going to the arm bar.
Right.
I had to transition it and really give him no room because he just wanted back to the feet to sling some leather. You know, he wanted to throw hands the whole time.
Right.
And knowing that he had 12 years of boxing experience, I believe was what it said, and he was like a five-time Afghan national champion. I was like, we're not gonna stand up and bang with this kid because he's gonna touch me up on the feet.
Right.
So I gave him no space. The arm triangle, I think, was the one that impressed me the most because most people probably would have gone to sleep in that arm triangle because my shoulder was pressed deep, and I thought it was gonna be over. I thought for sure he was gonna tap, and I think I blew my arms trying to finish that because when I came up and I went back to the mount, and I'm like, oh, I look up at my coach, he's yelling at me to move and to transition to another choke, and I'm just like, one sec, I can't move my arms, coach. Yeah, it surprised me a lot that he was able to get out of those submissions.
Right. And, you know, as you said, you train with Holman.
Yes.
So, just what goes in the gym? I mean, when you come to India, when you come to the SFL, you do not really think, okay, you know, I need to work a lot on my grappling because there are exciting grapplers here.
Yeah.
You know, from the country itself, you know, a lot of people want to see strikers. You have people from wushu, kickboxing, Muay Thai backgrounds, taekwondo, and very less from your jiu-jitsu, from your, you know, other grappling disciplines. So, just what went in your gym before you came to India for your fights?
I've actually been working on a lot of striking just in case someone does manage to shut down my wrestling. If someone can stop my takedown, I have no fear standing right in front of them and throwing hands, cutting my angles, and beginning to pick them apart. But I'm going to make them stuff that takedown. You know, I've been practicing boxing and kickboxing and a little bit of Muay Thai for the past 6 or 7 years, so it's not like I'm going to be a slouch on the feet. The thing is that I just have such a significant advantage on the ground. Why give them a puncher's chance?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And how has your experience been training with someone like Holman? You said you've been training with him from a very young age.
Yes.
So how has your experience been growing and evolving as a fighter while training with someone like Dennis Holman?
It's mind-blowing. He's picking his brain. It's like picking a genius, you know. He's like the Einstein of MMA, basically. He knows exactly what he's doing in every position. He's got a counter to the counter's counter, you know what I mean? Like every single little position you might find yourself stuck in, he knows how to get out of it, and he also knows how to keep you there if he wants to keep you there.
Right. Okay. You know, lastly, I just wanted to talk to you about just what is next for you, because you said you're going to fight this Friday. So what's next for you, and once you're done with SFL, you'll be heading back to the United States. Just what is next for you in general?
Next for me is Friday night. You know, I can't look too far in the future. I got to fight this Friday, and my goal is go in there and finish that fight. Don't let it go to the judges again. You know, I did win a dominant decision, but I had like almost 30 amateur fights, and I've only been to one decision before that one. So that was my second decision I've been to in all like 35 MMA fights that I've been in now, and yeah, I don't like it. I don't like decisions. I like to go in there and finish fights, so I was kind of bummed out with my performance, but happy to get the win, of course.
All right, outstanding. So, you know, any last message for your fans in India who will be watching this show, will be knowing more about you? Any you know, last message for them?
Make sure to tune in on Friday night. Watch me get another W and a couple more on the weeks following that.
All right, thank you, Benson. It's been a pleasure. We'll watch your fights, and I'll catch up with you again soon.
Awesome. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MMA India Show. As you just heard, we have Harrison with me, the voice of SFL. So, Harrison, first thing, how was your experience? How has your experience been in India so far?
My experience has been great here. I really enjoy it, enjoy the Indian culture. It's been a bit of a shock coming from the U.S. The driving here is crazy, but it keeps you on your toes. People have been very friendly to me here. I've just had this is a dream come true for me.
And is it the first time that you're in India? Or
this is my first time in India.
Your first time in India?
First time in India, yeah.
So a lot of people, you know, we've talked to a lot of fighters who've been to India, and the one thing that they say is, the main thing that they have a problem with is the food. They say it's way too spicy for them.
As an American, yes, like we're not really used to food being quite that spicy, so you got to pick and choose. I have the advantage of not fighting, so I don't have to make weight, and I don't have to. So if my stomach's a little bit upset from the spiciness, you know, it's not quite as bad as for, say, a fighter. You know, they don't want to go and poop their pants on TV.
Right, and you know, you've been here for nearly a month, I guess.
Yeah, about 3.5 weeks.
3.5 weeks, and you've seen a lot of Indian fighters fight here. I wanted to talk to you firstly about your thoughts on the Indian fighters. What do you think about the skill set? Just what's your thought on the Indian fighters in general?
My first thoughts on the Indian fighters was I was very impressed with how strong they are. Like, I've had a chance to roll with a couple of them. They grab a hold of you, and it's just kind of like, holy crap, these guys are really strong. You know, obviously with the background that they have here with wushu, the striking, you know, striking is better. And you see some of the guys like Babajit, it's a huge knockout. Tehran, huge knockout. Asharoka. Like, there are a lot of guys with good striking. The grappling needs to improve. And that'll come in time, you know. As I think Super Fight League's going to be amazing for that, because kids on TV are going to be watching it and they're going to see, I can get onto TV doing this. I want to learn how to do that.
Right.
You know, and it can start possibly replacing some other sports.
Right. And, you know, the one thing that even, you know, I talk to a lot of Indian fighters, the one question that they often ask me is, do you think I'm ready to get into the UFC? So, you know, how is that process from where you start to where you are the elite, you know, at the elite level that you can get into the UFC? What is this journey like? You've been there, you've done that before, you're a fighter yourself. How is this journey and how does it translate from the very beginning to the very top?
It's commitment. A lot of people, when I was fighting, wintertime I'm in the gym, spring I'm in the gym, summer I'm in the gym, fall I'm in the gym.
Right.
If I didn't have a fight coming up, I'm in the gym. Like, that was what's beneficial, because it doesn't matter how good your coaches are if you don't put the time in, or if you're taking long breaks. A lot of fighters that I see, especially lower level, they will get into the gym and they'll start training 4 weeks for a fight, and then they won't train until their next fight.
Right.
You know, and when you're getting ready for a fight, you don't want to learn new things.
Right.
You want to take what you're good at and try and make that as good as you can and tailor it to your opponent. Right. But when you have that time off, that's when you start practicing new moves. That's when you let yourself get into new positions. You try different striking combinations. You try all the new stuff.
Right.
So just being consistent, that is the most important thing. And everybody who is the top at any sport, whether it be football, cricket, MMA, I can promise you they are in the gym all the time.
Right. And it's interesting that you brought this topic up, because we have seen, you know, in the recent past that if you're a boxer and you're fighting a wrestler, you've seen fighters during the, you know, entire duration of the training camp, they focus more on wrestling and nothing on boxing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's how they should go about with the training camp, or do you think it has to be fundamentally strong in the boxing first and then a little bit of wrestling, but not the entire duration of the camp?
Well, I think you got to do enough. Like, if I'm a really good boxer, and I'm going up against a wrestler, I'm going to get taken down.
Right.
So what I need to do is focus on not getting that, but I can't just forget my boxing.
Right.
You know, if you're just a boxer and you're trying to learn and you have no takedown defense, you should be spending 4 or 5 classes a week, if you can, working on takedown defense or getting back up to your feet or something like that. But you know, and then do 1 or 2 classes a week where you're maintaining your striking skills.
Right.
So that it's a lot easier to maintain a skill set than it is to improve a skill set.
Right.
So, you know, it's the same thing with weight. If you let yourself balloon up real big in between fights, it's a lot of work and it's a real grind to get back down to weight.
Right.
Where if you can stay 15, 20 pounds above, and that was one thing that I didn't do well in my fight career, was I would let myself get really heavy.
Right.
And the few times where I maintained my weight, my fight camps went way better. But you've got to focus on the wrestling, and that's one of the difficult things about training MMA, is there's so much you have to train.
Right.
You know, and so having the right coaches, the right training partners is essential.
Right. Now we'll get into your fighting career in a bit. I just wanted to talk to you about your transition from inside the cage to sitting at cage side and talking about the fights. How did that come about?
So I was fighting, actually had my last 2 fights, I fought for the SFL title in America. And I had all my fights with that same promotion, that Super Fight League. I was working with Cage Sport, Brian Hallquist. Amazing guy. But when I got done fighting, I called him and I asked, I was like, I'm done fighting now, but I still want to be a part of the sport.
Right.
And so he's like, well, let me get back to you. I thought I was going to do like maybe post-fight interviews, because as a fighter I could give a different perspective.
Right.
And then he's like, hey, do you want to do commentary? Which is my dream. I used to, when you're little, I would buy like 7. I'd buy the VHS UFCs and we would turn the sound off and practice doing commentary.
Right.
You know, so I've been training for this for like 20 years.
Right.
But now that I'm here, I really enjoy the aspect of doing commentary, being cage side. I love performing.
Yeah.
And now that I'm not fighting anymore, this still gives me a stage that I get to show my knowledge in. I get to show off a little bit.
Right.
You know, I put a lot of hard work to learn what I have.
Right.
And I'm still putting a lot of hard work in to try and become a better commentator. And it's just very rewarding when you get a chance to kind of show that off, and then people's like, hey, you did a good job.
Right.
You know.
And, you know, ever since you started commentating and you started that with SFL and you're now doing it with SFL in India, do you think your just appreciation of the sport in general, or how you view things, has changed?
Yes and no. Sorry, I have a stutter. Yes and no. I've always kind of looked at it from a coach's perspective.
Right.
And doing analysis is very similar to cornering a fighter.
Right.
And that always made sense to me. Because to me, it's... My favorite part about MMA is the game.
Right.
You know, it's... How do I set up a strategy that can... Oh, they're really good at this. What things can I use against them? Right. How can I be... If they've got really good kicks, you know, and you've got some standards. If you got somebody who's really good at kicks, get inside and start punching. If you got somebody who's really good inside and punching, keep them at range with kicks.
Right.
You know, and there's kind of playing that game, and as I'm watching fights, I pay attention to that a lot more than I did,
right,
you know, as a fighter. Like, the game, and it's helping me improve as a martial artist, because when I go back and I train, I, you know, watch fights in a much more analytical way, and it's just, so it's a little bit of a change, but it has not been a difficult change for me at all.
Right. Now, you know, we get to your fighting career.
Okay.
Before this, we were just talking about an interesting, yet very limitedly discussed aspect of the fight sport, which is weight cuts.
Yeah.
So, and you told me about, you know, your own experiences with weight cuts. A lot of fighters in India, I don't think we're at the stage where they completely appreciate or understand the nuances.
Sure.
Just how difficult it is cutting weight, especially when, you know, you just grow as a fighter. So can you give us your experiences, your thoughts on weight cuts and how difficult it can be for a fighter?
I don't think weight cuts are not fun. I don't think weight cuts should be too difficult. You have to be disciplined. When I was training 5-6 nights a week, I would go out and I'd go for a half-hour run every night. Not hard, but just enough to kind of get my blood moving, get the metabolism going, to help me with sleep. You know, I wasn't one of those guys who had everything. I'm going to eat 2 chicken breasts at lunch, you know, all of that. But I knew what I needed to eat. I would. So generally, like 6 and 7 weeks out from a fight, I would eat whatever junk food was left in my house. Right. You know, I didn't sweat it. You know, and then like 5 weeks out, 4 weeks out, if I went out with friends, I never really worried about it too much. Right. You know, I'd eat junk, but I didn't have any junk food in the house anymore. I started replacing it. And then about 3 weeks out from a fight, 3 to 4 weeks out, I really started to nail down my diet.
Right.
And it was only, you know, I'd buy kale,
yeah,
and not a big fan of it, but throughout the day, I would just grab a handful out of the fridge and eat it, and I'd go through a bag in, you know, 2 or 3 days. But you've got to stay on that. You can't, cheat days are dangerous.
Right.
Because a cheat day can turn into 2 cheat days, which can turn into a cheat week.
Right.
And pretty soon you have set yourself back a long way. And I learned that the hard way.
Okay.
In my fight career, especially earlier, I did that. But just that discipline of cutting weight, making sure you're working out, doing all of that, and then and doing it over a long period, right, as opposed to 4 weeks out, because I would drop 30 pounds from, right, my walking weight to my fight weight.
Yeah.
And that was generally a 6 to 8 week process.
Right.
So that, and then, you know, when you start cutting those first 2 weeks, you lose a ton of weight.
Yeah.
I'd lose 8, 9, 10 pounds. And then I would lose 2 or 3 pounds in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I was still doing everything right.
Right.
But it's just the body, you know, some of it the weight sheds super easy.
Right.
And then people get frustrated and they get discouraged because they don't see that.
Right.
And you just got to trust the process.
Right.
You know, I had 41 fights. I never once missed weight.
Right.
Even though there were times I was like, oh, there's no way I can do this. The weight's not coming off like it did, as easy as it did last time.
Right.
But if you just trust the process, I know what works.
Right.
And so even if I'm not seeing the results. But here in India, I don't think that it has evolved to the point where you're going to see big weight cuts as it has in some other countries. I also came from a wrestling background where weight is, so from a very young age, you know, I was familiar. I didn't have to start cutting weight until high school, but I've been around it and I was very familiar with it throughout my life.
Right. And you know, the other thing that the fighters ask me normally is, how do we keep a tab on our nutrition? So when you were a fighter, did you have a nutritionist? How did that process go about?
So for most of my career, I did not have anybody specifically helping out with that. But I know the things to eat. Lots of vegetables, get green vegetables in, rice, chicken, tuna with a little mustard and mayonnaise was one of my favorite. Maybe cut a little bit of onions in there. You start to get creative and, you know, learn ways to prepare healthy food. But you know, I was fortunate enough that I took health classes, and having been around the sport, I had a lot of people who were far more knowledgeable than me, able to share that with me.
So when an Indian fighter asks us as to how do they keep their nutrition in check, how that can happen, because even the problem with Indian doctors is, for example, in the United States, you have doctors that exclusively work with fighters, so they know what nutrition is good for them. But in India, that's not the case, because people still aren't that educated about shedding weight and then getting that weight back safely.
Sure, and there are some doctors that are very much against weight cutting too. And I don't know where they're getting their information from. It could be correct, but my thoughts on that is they look at it in a long term. If you treated your body over months like you do in like fight week, that could be very detrimental. But there are lots of people who study it, and there are simple things you can do. Reduce sodium, because that sodium will hold on to water. So it makes it harder to lose that weight. It makes it harder to sweat. You know, lean, non-fatty meats are good, or just swearing off meats in general. Get rid of a lot of dairy. That cheese was always really hard for me to give up. You know, and just stay away from sugars where you can. I got a sweet tooth, so what I would do is I'd take a candy bar and I'd cut it up into pieces and then put it in bags and freeze it. And so that way, you know, if I get back from run or something, I'm like, I need some candy, you know. And it was a manageable amount, you know, it was a piece like that as opposed to eating a whole candy bar. And since I kept them in the fridge, it was easier, because then I have to consciously think of getting up and going to the fridge, as opposed to just having, you know, like all the pieces right there where I just, you know, eat it in no time. So there are a little bit, but it just comes down to discipline. When people have time to make weight and they don't, they will blame it on a bunch of different things, but nearly every time it comes down because they weren't disciplined. They didn't do the day-to-day things. They tried to do all the big stuff, but the big stuff doesn't get you where you want to be. You have to be everything in sports, everything in life that you want to be successful with, whether it be sports, business, music, whatever, discipline. If you cannot be disciplined and stick to what you need to do, you won't be a success, and you have nobody else to blame.
And the other interesting topic that's been around for a while now is getting in divisions similar to boxing, where you have, say, a lightweight, a super lightweight. So in between your 155 and your 170, you have a 165 division. So do you think that's a proper thing to do? Do you think that's suitable for the fighters?
I don't know. If they did that, I would like to see them just redo all the weight classes. As opposed to trying to fit one in there, you know, because you've got 115, 125, 135, 145, 155, then you're jumping up to 170, so that's a 15-pound. I mean, the 10-pound difference can be fairly large. And you've got a 15-pound difference. Then 70 to 85 is a 15-pound difference. Then you've got a 20-pound difference from that to the 205, and then you've got a 60, I think it's 80-pound difference now from 205 to 285.
Right.
So I think you could definitely rearrange that a little bit better.
Right.
But as far, you know, we'll just see where the sport grows, and as it continues to grow, I think that is something you'll see. I don't know that you'll see it anytime soon.
Right.
Say in the next 5 years, though.
Right. And I know you have to run back and do your work, so
I got to start getting all pretty.
yeah, well, maybe a little. Anyways, so you know now people know the face behind the voice of SFL. So now you have Indian fans that are going to tune in, watch the show, watch you talk. So do you have any message for them?
I'm so grateful to you guys. This has been an absolute dream to me. I've had a couple of people come up and give me really nice comments, and I've just been amazed at how rabid the Indian fans are. Like when they're here for the fights, you guys are some of the best fans in the world, and it just makes my job super fun.
All right, thank you, Harrison.
Absolutely.
Pleasure. We'll catch up once again.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.